Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. Join the nation by hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to become a paying citizen of the nation, hit the join button and your options will be presented. Today I want to continue on in my deconversion story for 2023. I'm giving a much longer version of this. Part of it is getting my thoughts organized and into a format. So I'm currently working on my deconversion story in book form, and so this has been a way of helping me organize my thoughts, but I also do this to share my story for those of you that may want some encouragement in your own deconversion, because I have a lot of struggles, and I don't hide from that. I really don't hide from the struggles that I have and continue to have. Today I want to get into my church number 3. I left off with the idea of I had gotten to a point where I rejected Christianity on May 10th, 2015. I preached a message, realized sin wasn't real, God of the Bible couldn't be real, none of the stuff in there was real. I moved into what I would call a deist position, and I was really trying at this point to find my way back into faith, but I had a classic problem. I'm a pastor that preaches Christianity on Sunday to make a living, and I really struggled with that right away, because I had come to this conclusion that I'm making money off of a lie, and I was having problems reconciling that with the fact that I'm generally an honest person, and so I'm struggling with this. But I said, maybe I'll find my way back into faith. And so from that time, May 2015 to June 2016, which I'll get to in a minute, I spent all this time trying to preach and read and do all this stuff back into faith. And I began to read a lot of atheists, trying to find some flaws in their positions. I was reading my Bible more, probably more than ever, trying to find, there was so many flaws, and it became painstakingly problematic for me to read the Bible and just not see all the bad things in it anymore. It was just like, and what this search, this desire to find my way back to Christianity ultimately led to was being driven further and further from it. On my blog, All Things Rabyd, I began to, probably that year, you could see the struggles. What I'm writing on, I'm really struggling about. And I began to look at a lot of atheists on YouTube. I began to hear the different arguments for and against the existence of God. I was really basically a deist at this point. I kind of felt there needs to be a guiding force to the universe, something that's making it happen, but maybe not necessarily personal or not necessarily benevolent. That the God of the Bible was basically kind of crap to me at this point, because he just became unpleasant to me. It's kind of ironic at this point, because I had grown up as a child and as a teenager with Jesus as my hero, and now I began to look at Jesus and I'd read his stories, and I'm like, boy, this guy's kind of messed up. Okay, he's kind of crazy. Okay, I remember reading C.S. Lewis's quote, he's either a liar, a lunatic, or Lord, and I'm like, well, I'm thinking he's a cross between a liar and a lunatic at this point. And so, or a very good faith healer, I guess, maybe, which kind of is being a liar and a lunatic when I think about it. It's just, this was a hard time for me, because I'm trying to preach, I just lost a good friend. My imaginary friend Jesus had just died, for all practical purposes. And so I ended up just trying to figure out a way to get that back. Is there anything that can save Christianity? And the more I studied Christianity in comparison to other religions, I realized it was pretty much the same. Okay, there's no differentiation between Christianity and a lot of other religions. And so I began to, realized that that just wasn't going to work. And so after about a year of struggle, I announced at church I was taking a month off. I was going to take a sabbatical in June of 2016. And, there was a lot of things going on that month anyway that I wanted time off for, but I just said, you know what? I'm just taking the month off. Okay, I'm not going to preach. I'm not going to be here at the church. I don't really want to go inside of a church at all. There was a lot of things that were very problematic. I think the first thing that month that I had to do that was really hard was put down my dog, who I'd had since he was a puppy. And then he was a 16-year-old beagle, and he was just getting to the point where he could hardly move. He was always in pain. And so I put him down, and it was one of the hardest things in my life. And I couldn't figure out, it's just a dog, and yet I realized that it was more than a dog, that there was kind of this symbiotic relationship that I had had with this dog. I mean, Gabriel Michael Rabyd, as we called him, just had empathy in spades. He would, if you were hurting, he was on your lap trying to make you feel better. And, for the next couple of years, in fact, even to this day, I put my hand down, looking every once in a while, and I just rested on the arm and had my hand just kind of stretched out because that's where he would be all the time. For 16 years, I would just put my hand down, he'd be there, and I'd scratch his head, and he would rub his face against my hand, and it was just this, and it was a hard moment. And I know it was summertime, and now looking back at it through an autistic lens and a hypersensitivity lens, my sensitivity to brightness off the chart. I'm always wearing sunglasses. Heat's bothering me. Smells are bothering me. The problem, like with touch, is I wasn't getting a lot, because I'll talk about this a little bit, but my marriage was starting to go south, and it was just not working out that well. I really felt like it was pretty one-sided most of the time. And I would try to express this to my wife, but she would just kind of, my ex-wife now, blow it off, and it became a communication issue. That month also, my oldest son was getting married, and so I went to that wedding. I didn't have to officiate it, thankfully. I just didn't want to do that. And then I, of course, just enjoyed the festivities, danced, noticed that I was just not, this was a joyous occasion, but inside I was just not having a good time. I was just going through a lot. I was thinking about a lot of issues, my lack of faith, the church had problems, and then when we were home, and not at a wedding in New York or whatever, I was spending an incredible amount of time hiking on trails. I'd gotten into hiking at this time and doing a lot of thinking. And I'm wrestling with this idea of God. And I'm going to tell you all you deists this. I suddenly realized that my deism was just another man-made religion, other than the person who made it up was me. Okay, it had all the trappings of religion. It had all the creed when you really think about it. Sure, you could have this impersonal God that doesn't give two craps about humanity, but it still was one of those things where you're trying to wrestle with it, okay? And I realized that it's just a rationalized religion. The last bits of religion that you want to cling to are rationalized, and that's why you keep them. And so I began to discard it. And I remember going into June 2016, still a deist, still believing in God, still trying to find some struggle. But I spent a lot of time hiking and thinking, and I was doing like 2 hours a day just walking. I live in what's called the crossroads to the rails to trails in western Michigan, and I would just pick a direction, north, south, east, or west. I'd walk out for an hour and walk back, and do a lot of thinking while I was doing that. And I remember at the end of the sabbatical, at the beginning of the sabbatical, I was still a deist, still struggling to find my faith. And at the end of the sabbatical, I was no longer a deist, I was an atheist, and I realized what that meant. And I also realized that I wasn't struggling to find faith anymore. I just didn't want to waste my time with it anymore. And I think you can see at that moment after the sabbatical, my writing on my blog changes, because I'm just engaged in stuff, and it's not really there. And 6 months later, that blog would end, okay, because there was no reason for me to explore theology anymore, because it was just a waste of time to me. And so I spent the next 2 years being an atheist pastor. I would show up, do the job, preach, teach, Bible studies, open up the Bible, all the while inside going, this is complete and utter bullshit. Okay, and I knew it was bullshit. And I would ask hard questions, even of students in my Bible study in Sunday school, and we would come up with some ad hoc bullshit answer, and we'd accept it. And so I began to realize how much of this was just make believe and made up, and people want it to be true. That's why they accept it as true. And so I came out of that. I was doing okay. I was going to school. I was getting my political science degree finished. I was getting my minor in economics and another minor in international business finished. I'm figuring I could maybe go into business or politics or something like that as some sort of aid. I'm kind of realizing now that that's kind of foolish, because they don't really like older people to be doing that, either one of those things, by the way. I think age discrimination is a real thing. And I was suddenly realizing that I'm going through this degree, trying to get it finished. My marriage is going to shit. I don't have any faith. I'm preaching, and everything is slowly but surely stressing out my nervous system to a breaking point. And the breaking point came in February of 2018. My organist of many years since I'd been at the church died. A couple months before that, one of my good friends in the church had died. So I lost two good, decent friends in the church that were good friends to me. And the grief of that was really, really strong. And it reminded me a lot of my father's death. And so I felt like, I can't really dwell on this, but I couldn't help but dwell on it. And the organist had kind of confided into me that he was kind of an agnostic anyway. He had told me, he said the only reason he stuck with church was so he could play the organ, and he was damn good at it. And so and when he died, I'm like, okay, what do I say at this guy's, what do I do for the eulogy? And I talked about how he was a good organist and a good friend, and I didn't mention God at all. and I'm the preacher. And the stress of it just getting to me, I'm overloaded. My marriage is going to hell. The politics of the church has reached a point where I'm like, are you guys going to let me do anything? Okay, because I was just basically allowed to preach and teach, and that was pretty much it. No vision for the church, nothing. Because of the organist's death and because of the pianist's death a few years before, I'd finally gotten a raise. I was making $50 more a week. Yay, yep. And I realized, this church is never going to support me anyway. I need to get my degree done and go find a better job, something that pays more. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble because I have nothing for anything. And so I'm just struggling. I'm mortally afraid that somebody's going to find out that I don't believe in God anymore. And I'm hiding it. I'm using all the verbiage, but I'm lying a lot in order to cover stuff, and it bothered me immensely. It just made me just go nuts. And I was looking, I had a lot of stressors. By this time my kids are grown up and out of the house, they're all doing their own thing. My marriage was bad, like I said. The church is going bad. Two of my favorite people in the world had died. My dog was dead, so I didn't have that support mechanism anymore. It was summertime. We're coming into summertime. I think my hypersensitivity was going off. And my nervous system is just overloaded. I'm starting to feel, I remember this very distinctly, I'm starting to feel like I did when my father died. Completely, my nervous system is completely overloaded. I'm getting mortally afraid of that. Because if that happens, I'm going to shut down again, and I couldn't afford to do that. I'm going to school, doing very well. Going to school was one of the bright spots during this time because I was learning. Took a genetics class, and as part of my general ed requirements, I still was short of science credit, so I took a general ed class in genetics, and suddenly I realized, none of this requires a guiding force at all, which would later be completely reinforced by Aaron Ra's systematic classification of life. When I watched that series after getting out of the church, it was like, oh, yes, we don't need a guiding force. We have forces in place already that do this all by themselves without a God. And my stress level is at an all-time high at this point. I am trying to desperately to hide things because I don't want people to know. I feel like I'm very estranged from my wife at the time. We're living in the same place, sleeping in the same bed, but not much is happening. I felt like it was a very one-sided relationship. I remember when I left working 2 jobs, she had a fit, because, we don't have as much income. I'm like, woman, I'm like working overnight full time, and then I'm pastoring a church, and I am tired. Okay. And so dropping the overnight job had really alleviated a lot of my stress at that time. And now it was all back because of all the stuff that's going on. And I'm looking for anything, and I mean anything, that'll give me some other bright light besides my school. Any kind of relationship with anybody, because 2 of the big relationships I had in the church were gone now. And I didn't really have anybody else. The one guy that I had been good with, my moderator, we had kind of become estranged because we had different ideas of the direction of the church, and he was constantly sabotaging me with the church. And so even though we maintained a friendly relationship, he was constantly doing stuff that would undermine anything I wanted to do. And so I ended up basically getting into a position where I did not, and I'm just looking for a bright light. I'm looking for anything that would change the situation. And in would walk a young lady, and she would definitely change my life forever. But that's a story for the next video. I think next video I'll be looking at the whole end game, how I fell out of the ministry and what I started to do immediately afterwards. And then after that, that'll probably be the end of it. I think the next video will be the end of the deconversion story, because I think it's important to show some of the main catastrophic effects. And then probably on Saturdays you'll hear me talk about reconstruction, and I'm going to go back to these days and some of the things I've learned and some of the lessons I've learned on reconstruction along the way. But I want to get the deconversion story done for a lot of reasons. I thank all you guys for sticking around, but this is a very hard time right now for me to talk about, because it's part embarrassment, part heartbreak, and part overwhelming sense of dread that all come to a head. And it's just one of those things where every time I talk about it, I feel that same emotion and that same weight. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit about that. So thank you very much. Thanks once again for stopping by. I should appreciate every like, share, and subscribe. Next time we'll go into the fall and how I left my church, and it was not glamorous or glorious. Trust me, it was quite the opposite. You guys continue to do what you do, because you're making this channel grow. We've passed 3,600 watch hours at this point at the making of this video, and that's growing. Getting very close to the ad revenue. Once that starts, I think having that steady stream will really help the channel. I'm definitely going to, every time I make a little bit more money, I'm trying to up my game and make these videos a little bit better. So thank you very much for your support. It's been a wild ride these last few months, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's one of the few things right now that's going well for me, so thank you very much. And yeah, you guys are great. Once again, remember to live your best life. You only get one go around, so make sure it's a good one, because there is no afterlife. As far as I can tell, there's no evidence for one. And so live your best life in the here and now. Do things for yourself, for your family, for friends, for those you love, for the world you live in. Make this world a better place for you and them. And I think you'll find yourself a lot happier when you're looking at something that actually gives you some tangible results, instead of some pie in the sky by and by that doesn't exist. Continue to put your opportunities, your money, your skills and talents into work, the things that are real, and stay away from the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. So trust me, I know that from experience, which you're about to find out in the next part of the story. And I want to thank all of you once again for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.